essential components of the Christian ethic is how God sets up the teaching strategy, some would call it, or the ordaining of one's children to receive the information and necessary morality from the parents. And that is necessary specifically to teach the next generation, to instruct them in godliness. It's an essential part of the Christian faith, it's an essential part of the Christian tradition. However, in the modern age, there have been continuous assaults against said tradition, one where even many Christians have adopted the secular mindset that undermines the very commandment to the parents, and more specifically, in this case, we'll profile it as well, how children are supposed to enact the very things that their parents teach them. This, some will call it a line of communication, others will call it a pipeline of education, however you decide to denominate it, has been allowingly broken by Christians themselves. And one of the ways that is that this subversion has been undertaken, specifically by the use, we would call it the evil use of satire. Before anybody goes on to state that this might be an overly simplistic edition, live stream of Irrespective, we would encourage you to continue to listen to our words and the encouragement that we have for the audience, because although there are Christians who would try to dismiss this as overly neophyte, it's kind of interesting that many Christian parents and families might consider this to be something that beginners might learn, but they're just not very well practiced in implementing it. So far from being expert on what we should be expert on, the Christian testimony, especially in the West, is one of not following what the text tells us to engage in with respect to family members, with each other. Our parents are supposed to educate their children, and the children are supposed to take that education and implement it and deploy it in the world. All the opposite has actually happened. So a lot to speak about, a lot to speak into the lives of Christian families on this edition, on this live stream of Irrespective. Welcome each and every one of you to this new episode. For those of you that might be joining us for the first time, welcome. For those of you that continue to watch these episodes, welcome back. My name is Gio. This is my co-belligerent, and I'm his Jesus.
Good morning, friends. As you study your Bible, you pick up on the fact that Satan understands that the way you destroy a good thing, a great thing, is to attack it at its roots. What we know of, or we call family, this is God's idea. This is not a group of philosophers or science teachers in some back room in some major university thinking, what can we do to help humanity? The idea of the family, the nuclear family, that's God's idea. And if you've been paying attention, you know that it's been under attack. It most definitely has been under attack. The culprits, well, that would be your educational system. And right along with the educational system, you see the films and the television industry. In my opinion, the way that I see it, this has been going on since the 60s and most especially in the 70s. You started taking attacks. You see them taking attacks mostly against the dads, the fathers, the exaltation of the woman, the single woman who is bringing up kids all by herself. Never mind that there was a program way back then, black and white television, where the dad, the mom passed away and he's bringing up his kids all by himself. No. The dads from a certain point on must be frowned upon, and they must be brought down, and the exaltation of the mom must come along, which, by the way, nobody was ever taking shots at the moms way back then. But the point is that there is social engineering going on, and it has been going on. And you can see it in place, how it got in place via the educational system. And then, like I said, film and television, you have Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker is a moron. He was painted as a moron. Then you have Frank Barone. He was painted as a moron, and so on and so forth. MASH had a cross-dresser in its midst. In the middle of a medical platoon, in the middle of the war, the Vietnam War, you had a cross-dresser there, and so on and so forth. Mary Tyler Moore. Boy, there's so many things that I could say about the Mary Tyler Moore show. But now it seems like, hey, not only can we engineer people to think differently, we can also make a few dollars while at it. Bring in progressive insurance. they have this fictional character, Dr. Rick. And Dr. Rick gives you tips, for your journey to unbecome your parents. So I think I know that their purpose is to sell insurance. And they're using satire like Jesus, Geo here. I think I called you Jesus there. Must be some divinity at work there. Dr. Rick gives you tips so you can unbecome your parents. And again, this is brought in. This is satire. This is what they'll tell you. We believe, I think this is what they will tell you. But if you're selling a product and you're using an idea to sell the product, you want that idea to stick. This is the reasoning behind jingles. And there are jingles that are still jingling around my mind because I learned them as a child, as a young man. And so we start seeing that even the commercial industry is starting to embrace the idea of social engineering. This is another way, as I understand it, this is just my understanding of it, of getting you to buy this particular insurance and also getting you to expand, embrace even more, if you will, the idea of social engineering to the point that your parents, mostly the dads, they'll take a couple of shots at the moms here, but it's mostly the dads. You have to make sure whatever happens, you don't start looking like your father.
Couple of things to get to before we get to the main subject matter on this edition. First and foremost, do not forget to subscribe if you have not done so, irrespective, pun not intended. If you're watching this through X, Rumble, or YouTube, if you have not yet subscribed, we would encourage you to do so. Also, mash that notification bell if you haven't done so to be alerted as to when we go live, which is usually Wednesdays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and like we're doing now, Sundays, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please click on the thumbs up button and share our content with others. Whilst we are live streaming, we encourage you to interact with us by asking us questions about the subject matter and also to provide us with your comments on the socials. You can find us and subscribe to our accounts on these websites as well. X, our username there is @Irrespective77. You'll also find us on TikTok under the username @TheIrrespective. And last but not least, do not forget to donate. It helps us to continue to put out this content for your edification and illumination. There's a QR code that you can scan in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Conversely, there is a link available to you in the description box underneath the video player. Allow me to set a foundation for why we are going to critique what we're going to critique on this edition. Some of you might want to join the spirit of the age and dismiss this as mere satire. Well, Gio, Jesus, you guys are picking a bone with something that is innocent enough. These videos, I've seen these commercials, and all they do is that they make light of some of the ironic and downright silly behavior that older generations engaged in, and that's all Progressive Insurance is doing because that's what you're quoting, and most probably I suspect that that's what you're going to be talking about.
That's all that All in the Family was accomplishing.
Well,
that's all of these shows in the past were accomplishing until you take a closer look and you go like, wait a minute, the social engineering has been going on, and these have been instruments.
Well, the curious thing about it is, I know that we are showing, I'm not going to call it a generational divide because there is none. Anybody that knows our relationship knows there isn't. But I'm going to use the phrase with respect to things that were popular in your day and age. You've mentioned a few of them. I'm going to talk about how that gap necessarily was bridged in my generation. In my generation, growing up, it was The Simpsons. Homer Simpson is an idiot. He's a buffoon of a father. We can think of the MTV generation and all of the things that were being promoted through the music videos and the lyrics.
So we're watching cartoons.
Right.
What generation is that from?
Well, exactly.
Oh, it's all new. It's your generation and then the next one. No, we were doing that when we were kids.
Right.
But they need to take the credit for watching cartoons. It's been around for the longest time.
Yeah.
I'll throw one in. Anytime you saw a senior wearing flip-flops and socks, look at that old man. Doesn't he know he looks foolish? What are young kids doing when they wear their flip-flops?
Especially in athletics, you'll see now that one of their hanging around attire is the long crew socks with the sandals.
There's nothing new under the sun, but they make you believe that you're buying into something new, when in reality, what they are showcasing is how easy they can manipulate you. I'm sorry.
One of the things that the reason that I'm mentioning this is that's why I say that in one sense, they will present it as a generational gap, but in another, it's actually a continuation of a subversive idea that had begun long ago. So whilst in the baby boomer generation, there were their individual television programs and other things that they were sending out messaging in favor of rebellion, it actually continued with Generation X. It continued with the millennial generation, and even now through social media and the various entities that produce this sort of what they call entertainment. Look, one of the most prime examples, if you want to bring it to the modern age, where some of you might say, well, Jesus is talking about 60s and 70s, and Gio is talking about the 80s and 90s and probably early 2000s. There's no greater example of this sort of, shall we call it, framing than Disney. Disney continues to operate in the minds of people, and that's part of their propaganda, to say all we do is we produce entertainment for children. But when you look at the inherent messaging of the pixelated cartoons, the digital graphics that they produce, all of these modern movies that they're producing, at their core, it's the very same subversive messaging that has been undertaken and promoted by Hollywood and other entities. It's the same exact thing. It's just maybe has a fresh coat of paint, some would say, with digital graphics, but it's the exact same thing. But I go back to something that I said at the beginning of this transmission. I find it curious that Christians will listen to what we have to say here, and they will dismiss us as saying, we've heard this message before. But funny enough, you see in practice, if you can call it that, if they observe these things and they try to steer away from them and they implement what the Bible tells them about how families should operate, how Christ would have us operate our families, and what do we see over and over and over again? A constant stream of failures, as it were, for modern Christians to recognize this, or shall I add, I should actually amend that. They recognize where the malady lies, but they continue to fall into its trap. So evidently, there is something else afoot with respect to this, that they know that the problem is there, but they choose actually not to implement the biblical strategy to make successful families.
So does unbecoming your parents include women that cannot cook? They can't cook. Well, that's not my only role in life. The woman that is listening to this program will say, I never said that. But I believe a woman, men, people should know how to cook. Why don't we know how to cook? Why do I speak to a lot of young men who cannot even hold a hammer properly, much less use it? Is this part of unbecoming our parents? Sometimes we need to ask what some will deem as difficult questions. I think they're basic questions that we must ask. If it's not my dad that I need to look up to and see in him the behavior that I need as a man, as a husband, as a father, well, yeah, but some men are just horrible. They don't have good behavior. That's not what the insurance company is tackling, and that is not what we are tackling. If your dad wasn't worthy of being imitated, then you will need a role model. It might be your uncle. It might be your grandfather.
But you're telling me that, to your point, all of a sudden there are no role models?
Exactly.
Just because the father wasn't a proper role model or their mother wasn't a proper role model, there aren't others?
Exactly. But what about the great vast of men that have been great role models, but society, remember, social engineering has been telling them, no, do not, under any circumstance, imitate your dad's behavior. Well, if it's not my dad that I am supposed to imitate, who am I supposed to look up to and imitate? Is it the school counselor, the sports hero, the politician? So you start to see that God set up a system so that when you have the repetition, you have the stability. And all of a sudden, here come the people that want to destroy a good thing. Like I said at the beginning, if you've learned something about your Bible, if you've learned something about spiritual warfare, if you have learned something about how Satan works, he looks for the roots of something that is good, great, fantastic, and he decides, I am going to destroy this. What better way to destroy humanity than to destroy the family, than to destroy the role that God assigned the man and the role that God assigned the woman?
Well, it's the very system that God implemented, as I said at the beginning, at the onset of this live stream, that God implements for educational purposes, for communicative purposes between the older generation, to bridge that gap between the older generation and the new. And to your point, Satan and his minions have found a way to socially engineer that and now impress upon people that that's not the proper lines of communication. We need others to speak into our lives. As they say, look, we'll play a couple of examples here. And again, I know the tendency will be that some will say, again, these are just silly commercials making observations. But I said something on Wednesday, and I'm going to repeat it in anticipation at letting the audience know that we were going to touch on this subject. Satire can be a very good thing, because what would otherwise take maybe hours to explain, satire, if done properly, you can really take a point and drive it home to demonstrate the inherent ridiculousness of a proposition, of an idea, of an action. But satire can also be used for evil, like many other things can be used. We've talked about how sex is a wonderful thing in its context, in its godly context, but outside of that context, it can be used for a lot of evil. The same thing with satire. You'll note how satire can be used then to undermine the godly system, the one that he has established for everything we've profiled up until this point. And you'll notice the exact same thing here in these commercials. So don't be so quick to state it's just funny. It's satire.
They want you to be dismissive.
Right.
And when you go buy something, friend, be honest with me. Don't you tell all your systems, the antennas and everything else that you have, your warning systems, I'm going to go buy something. I am going to be dealing with salespeople. Let me be very sharp, otherwise they will dupe me.
Right.
What do you think they're trying to do?
Exactly.
They're trying to get you to buy a product. So instead of being dismissive,
right,
pay attention to the commercial and try and figure out what they're telling you, what it is that they want you to embrace before you go, yeah, this is fantastic. Because if the alarms are shut down because it's funny, it's satire, now they've got you. You don't want your alarms off, most especially when it's advertisement. They're trying to get into not only your billfold, they're trying to get into your life. This is part of, today, it's part of social engineering. Why do you think, Gio, they pay so many dollars for a piece of 30-second advertisement in the Super Bowl?
But I'd also like to point out, and this is a part of your argument here, is that catering is an important part. We're talking about food here. We're not talking about food here. We're talking about you are looking to grovel to a particular segment, a demographic. And this is how these companies work. They're saying, look, what is the segment, what is the demographic that we can most gain money from, influence from, or influence to? And there's also been a change in the business world throughout the last few decades where it went from a utilitarian aspect, and they were trying to sell you an idea in the age of industrialization of this product will improve your life. It went from that to how can we actually make our product something that you need so that it's a status symbol and people will pay exorbitantly for it. You see all of these things operating in the business world that then tucked within all of that machination already, it's the added concept of persons whom write these scripts, people whom put these ideas for commercializations together. It's, you know what, why don't I also interject a social engineering aspect in there so we can sell you the product, we can sell you the service, as it were, you'll pay us handsomely for it, but at the same time I also engage in changing the structure of society.
So I'm going to extrapolate. I'll add the following. If they want a piece of the insurance market and they're taking shots at mom and dad, then you know what, mom, you know what, dad, if you do happen to purchase insurance from this company, drop them.
Right.
Why?
I guess we haven't really said anything about this point, right?
They're telling your kids that you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
You're morons, you're stupid. So if you do have this policy, drop it.
But it goes to show you, we'll show the first one
now. Or
don't
buy one.
Who, if you think about it, folks, who are they catering to? Think about that. Listen to this first one. We'll give you one example. Who are they catering to when they make these commercials? Here's one example.
He does know he's in public.
Oh, he doesn't care. When a young homeowner starts to turn into their parent, it helps to show them just how bad it can get.
So they just hang out here
naked?
Yeah. What the?
Believe it or not, she's made progress.
Really? They don't have changing rooms here?
No, they do.
Progressive can't save you from becoming your parents, but we can save you money when you bundle home and auto with us.
You see, now, again, you might look at this and not look at it critically, but then when you think about it, you have to ask yourself, there's an awful lot of things that are being portrayed here that they're just not very reminiscent of real life. Let's go back to the beginning. We've got a guy jogging inside the store in his shoes. I don't remember I don't think I've ever seen an instance where either an older person, a middle-aged person, or a younger person is sitting, in those shoes and actually trying to try them out by jogging inside of the store. Maybe some of you might say, I've seen it before, but it's not something that happens very common. But the whole idea that they're trying to promote here is the older generation has a tendency to do this.
And I'll take it to the other side of that coin. I've seen a lot of young people in your sporting goods store, in the places where they buy their sneakers and their sports shoes. I've seen them try, put on the shoes, the sports shoes, and then take a walk, take a little sprint. I've seen them do it all the time. Why? Because they're making an investment.
Right.
Some of these shoes can cost $200-$300, and they want to make sure that it fits. Not just that it looks good and that it's a Jordan, but the thing must fit properly.
Right.
And I've seen him do what the old man was doing, but he's a buffoon, and the kid is
Right.
really hipped, and he knows what he's doing.
And then they bring up this case of the lady. Of course, they have to take it to the extreme. It's satire to make it, as it were, funny. They would say of the lady that's hanging dishes on the wall. And I know that there are persons that do that. But when you think about it, now I'm going to go to the other aspect of this. There's a lot of expensive china in the world. And what I mean by china is we're talking about, plates and things of that nature that are actually crafted with a lot of care, that those are, in a sense, showpieces, and
But
people
you
put
need
them
to
in their
understand
houses.
that if you are to decorate your house, you can't look to mom. You have to
Right.
look to the Gaines.
Right.
The Gaines know what they're doing. And
With
you
all
can
that
get
gray and white and shiplap.
But do you see what's happening? And this is why people don't understand or don't pay attention to advertisement. What is going on behind the scenes? After all, let's just say mom passes and she leaves that collection of plates.
Mhm.
She just left you
A ton of dollars.
a beautiful inheritance.
Yeah, a ton of dollars.
But no, you can just go ahead and discard it and send it to Goodwill. And when Goodwill takes a look at that, they're going to go like, wow,
Yeah.
are we going to sell this for a lot of money?
Yeah. But again, the essential messaging here, you'll notice it. It's whatever you do, relegate whatever your parents do to the dustbin of history. It's best to leave it aside because it looks foolish. It is ironic behavior. Just
And
to
by
give
the
an
way,
example.
Gio, who taught us men that it's okay for all of us to be naked in the locker room? Wasn't it the school system?
Right.
Because I remember going from 6th grade to 7th grade.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, everybody's naked in the locker room.
Right.
Who taught us that? The school
That
system,
was
the
the school system.
military.
Yep.
So they're taking shots at something that was established previously, and now they want to establish something differently. Once again, they want to establish a new thing, supposedly better, social engineering. We get it from the school system, we get it from television, we get it from the films, we get it from every place that society, and now it's podcasting, of course. We get it from everywhere because they want to turn you into a consumer of whatever it is that they're selling, whether it's an idea or a product.
Here's another example.
There's a reason they don't call them clean bikes, am I right?
Yeah.
Because it's
I find it interesting here that, and if you don't know this, whenever these marketing agencies are tapped by the big businesses or they have their own intercompany marketing agency, they always make sure that they are picking and selecting according to what won't offend the NAACP, and make sure that they, it's all DEI and all these things. So I find it interesting. They have a Hispanic young man, a little darker skinned young man here with the motorbikes, and it's an older white guy that's overweight that's engaging in conversation. So there's even messaging.
And who's
in all
being
of
friendly?
this. Right, exactly.
Why isn't the young
Exactly.
man the one that has been taught to be friendly and
Exactly.
respectful?
Well, and respect the older generation. Exactly.
dirt bike.
Gas stations. Whew.
You gotta start at the top and work your way down. You want me to do yours next? Oh, you're from Oklahoma.
They have to fill the silence.
The bathroom code's 9914.
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents.
So again, we're looking at a custom that is as old as American Pie, as some would say, where you would just talk to strangers, and it wasn't. It was a thing that was common in the olden age, where it was. If you think about it, it was an extension of Christian filiality, meaning I might not know you, but I'm going to strike up a conversation. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the modern generation thinks, why is that so
Stay
strange?
away. Don't talk to me. I live in silence. I
Right.
want to exist in silence. I'm going to go have my coffee surrounded by people that want to have a conversation with other people that are, in another hemisphere. Don't talk to me.
But I find it interesting. Isn't this the generation that complains about the loneliness epidemic, and yet they
Absolutely.
won't take the time to even talk to strangers in a
Well,
friendly
they
manner?
mock you if you reach out in conversation.
You see the inherent contradiction of all of these things. Here's another example which is similar to this.
To you, it may just be an elevator,
Here goes nothing.
but for a young homeowner becoming their parents, it's a learning opportunity.
Come on in. The more the merrier.
So again,
Paris, huh?
they're presenting it as looking foolish that a person were to hold the elevator for others. That's called common courtesy, last time I checked.
Bonjour.
We got any out-of-towners in the elevator?
Tom, it is not easy.
10th floor, huh? Must be a heck of a view.
Okay, see how everyone else is facing this way?
Progressive can't save you from becoming
But you see, it goes back to what we were just talking about. So the people whom love the alienation, the people whom they don't seem to enjoy human interaction, things that are growing cold, just like Christ had prophesied, those are the people whom are in vogue. We can't actually learn those lessons from our parents because they're the idiots. They're
And then
the
to get you
outcasts.
to pull away from that, they bring in exaggeration, hyperbole, because nobody does stand up
Yeah.
in an elevator.
Yeah.
They'll hold the door open for you. Welcome. There's space for a few more of you in here. But they have to take it to that place where all of a sudden, like you were pointing out, hey, stick to your corner. Don't talk to anyone here, because most especially a gas station is no place to strike up a conversation. I had one lady approach me once at a gas station, and she called me a young man. Can you imagine how I felt after that? Said, could you help me, please? And I'm going, sure, what can I do for you? This, I really don't know how to use these machines. My husband, he always said, I'll keep the gas in your car, your tank full. And he passed, and I have no idea how to do this. What should I have said? Stay away from me. Don't you know
You're
this is a
weird.
gas station?
You're
And-
weird.
Yeah, and we can't have conversations here. You know how many times I've seen one person drive up with a nice looking car, another person say, I like that car.
Sure.
A tip of the hat. What is wrong with us?
Common courtesy.
Exactly. When we put up with this stuff, and not only are we accepting it, when someone like myself or Gio decide to tackle this and show you what they're doing,
We're the strange ones.
we're the strange
We're the strange ones. A couple of things, folks, I'd like to read from. 2 Timothy 3. This is the Apostle Paul writing, obviously, to the young preacher. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. That's a very interesting choice of words, at least in the English translation, perilous. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good. A lot there that we can unpack. But you'll note that if you have been listening and watching what we've been profiling here, you'll notice that all of these attitudes, all of these tendencies that Paul writes to Timothy are encapsulated in what would seemingly be a commercial for insurance. And the other thing to note here is how people don't note, they're so desensitized to the fact, including Christians, that all of these concepts, all of these attitudes are encapsulated in what would appear to be a simple commercial for insurance. But that's exactly the trick. These people that craft these things will get you to buy into the idea subtly without ever noticing that they're actually catechizing you, in a sense, through these sorts of things. But of course, you need the concept to anesthetize you, the comedy, the satire, the presentation, whilst the venom is sipped or slipped into your system. All the while, you're adopting the spirit of the age, which leads you to, in essence, become the very thing that Christ tells us that we ought not to become. So once you profile it and examine it in the way that we have on this edition, it suddenly doesn't become a silly commercial, a throwaway commercial that is insignificant somehow. It actually gains a lot more significance, and it gives us and impresses upon us that we have to be paying attention much more than we are.
I have made a note in my mind that I will be tackling issues more often by taking a look at commercials. Because the way I see it is they're using your dollars against you, so you can destroy yourself while financing your own destruction.
And they enrich themselves off of your
Yes.
destruction.
Insurance companies are totally behind the vigilance system that this country is creating. What do you mean? Take a look at the things that are happening in your vehicle. And then who is saying, yeah, we push for this, we advocate for that, and we demand this. And you will find that behind all this vigilance and this control are insurance companies. Because they want to make sure they get you in the smallest little thing, so that way they go, I know you paid your policy, you paid it punctually, and when you paid late, you had the extra fee and you paid that, but you made this little mistake here, we're not going to pay.
All the whilst the state enforces you to pay the insurance tab, but they don't have to pay out.
So they're using your dollars against you, and like Gio added, to enrich themselves.
Right.
So I'm going to be doing more of this work because I think we need to start paying attention to the commercials, and we need to start making decisions as to what companies we will be backing. Because like I said previously, some of these jingles stay with you. I heard many, 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 many years ago, decades ago, that Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should. Where did you hear that? I was watching the Beverly Hillbillies. It was all so much fun. These hillbillies now come to California because they hit it big, they found oil. And Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro country. We have somebody like Bill O'Reilly who said he was offered the position of being the Marlboro man.
Yep.
So I'm going to be doing a few more of these programs. We are going to be doing a few more of these podcasts where we take a look at commercials and try and pick up on the idea of what it is they're trying to sell us and using our dollars against us. Again, if you think it's silly, if you think we have nothing else to dedicate our time to, that's fine. That's your opinion. But I find it interesting that I see people willing to use their dollars to enrich others while they hurt themselves. I remember when my kids were young, McDonald's and Sears struck up a deal of sorts.
Yeah, the McKids clothing. I remember that.
And I said, look at this.
Yep.
McDonald's wants to turn my child, my kids, into advertisement for McDonald's. And Sears is tagging right along. They never wore a my kids piece of clothing. So you need to pay attention because it's your dollars being used against you.
Yep. I'd like to leave the audience with this, and it gives you a good indication of what the Christian ethic is and the system that God himself is using or is using and we should implement with respect to passing on information to the next generation. And I said this years ago, and I'll repeat it again. This baseline that even Christians have adopted erroneously, and frankly, it stuns my mind to see how people excuse that. It's just normal. When I hear parents say, you know how it is, once they get to a certain age, they're just going to engage in rebellion. It's not normal. That's not the way that it should be. That's not the attitude that Christians should have. But it also goes to prove that Christians, even though they say they think differently from the world, they actually adopt a lot of worldly positions, and they somehow justify it, not thinking that it doesn't contradict what the Bible has to say, that it should be the norm. Go back to Titus 2. It's a text that I continually hearken to whenever we talk on these subjects and one has to deploy them in one's life. Titus 2, but as for you, speak the things which are proper for sound doctrine, that the older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith, in love and patience. The older women likewise, that they be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things. You notice that there's obviously something that has to be communicable. It has to transplant from one generation to the next. That they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, homemakers, good, obedient to their husbands, that the word of God may not be blasphemed. Likewise, exhort the young men to be sober-minded, in all things showing yourself to be a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing integrity, reverence, incorruptibility, sound speech that cannot be condemned, that one who is an opponent may be ashamed, having nothing evil to say of you. So evidently, we see here in these simple texts, and there's others, but Paul demonstrating that the godly system, if we want to call it that, the godly schooling is as follows. You take the information, not only in example, but in word and in deed from the older generation. They're supposed to communicate that, and the young people are supposed to absorb that as a lesson in righteousness, in godliness. But what we find is that a lot of Christians are, unfortunately, instead of following the New Testament system of transmission, we find that instead they're listening to the progressive commercials. The young people are listening to these sorts of social engineers through what appears to be a simple selling of car insurance policy or home policy. They're implementing that and actually rejecting the biblical system for teaching, as it were, the younger generation, and the older generation teaching a thing or two to the younger generation. That has been flipped on its head, and it's time for Christians to actually reject the social engineers that are trying to enrich themselves via your destruction and go back to the Christly system of education.
If your grandkids, if your kids have a palate, a craving for Bad Bunny and Taylor Swift, you have to ask yourself, how did that develop?
Yep.
I'm going to say something that might sound boastful, but it's not. It's actually my way of thanking God. I used to follow my dad around when he was the grandfather, and Gio here used to tag along. Now, my dad went on to be with the Lord. I am the grandfather. He's the father, and Nate is the grandkid. And all three of us enjoy playing sports together. And if it's happened once, it's happened a dozen times. I'm not exaggerating. I think Gio will correct me if I am exaggerating. They'll see us having conversation, enjoying each other's company, and they'll say something to the effect of, "Is that your dad? Is that your son? Wait a minute. Are you saying that 3 generations are out here playing golf, 3 generations are out here playing softball?" And when we go, "Yes," they're like baffled.
Right.
How did you pull this trick off? There is no trick. Just be consistent in your walk.
Yep.
Honor God in your walk, and you will get the same result.
Oh, and reject Progressive Insurance messaging.
And anybody else that wants to destroy God's idea for one man, one woman, coming together, multiplying themselves, establishing that family, and getting that steady way of living across many, many generations. And the next generation will be more powerful. Read the 112th Psalm. And the next one more powerful after that. So it's up to you. Again, some people might say, well, these two are taking shots at, silly things. Nobody's really paying attention. Exactly. But we are paying attention. And hopefully you will start paying attention, make better use of your time and of your dollars so that you won't allow people into your circle, into your family, into what you are trying to build, and then financing the people that are getting in there to destroy you.
Exactly. That's what we have for you on this edition, folks. We thank you for watching. If you stuck around for the entirety of the episode, we do remind you that our next transmission will be on Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A couple of things that we'd like to remind the audience.
Be a doozy on Wednesday.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because we've been talking about it. We were going back and forth as to whether or not we would touch on what we're going to talk about on Wednesday today, but we said, let's let it marinate a little bit more. I'm pretty sure a few of you have already seen the latest Tucker Carlson interview with Carrie Prejean Bowler. A lot of comments coming out of the things that were revealed in that interview. However, there's a couple of things that we'd like to pick out from that conversation, which we told the audience that we would keep you abreast as to what was happening with her removal from the White House Religious Liberty Commission. An awful lot of things were revealed in this interview, but we don't want to give a pass either to either Tucker Carlson or to Carrie Prejean, because there were also things that were stated there that gives us pause, shall
For
we say.
example, why should a Catholic be worried about suffering persecutions instead of first saying we need to repent because we persecuted an awful lot of people?
Exactly.
What kind of duplicity and hypocrisy is that? And then the way they admonish and just rebuke others. You first need to repent about your religion's persecution of others.
Yep.
And even the, let's call it, very strange and weird theology that gets you involved in something that God hates to the core, talking about idolatry.
Exactly. We'll have more to say on that on the Wednesday edition of Irrespective. We hope that you'll join us then. Please remember to subscribe if you have not done so yet. Hit the notification bell, click on the thumbs up button or tap it if you're watching this on your phone, and to share our content with others. We'd certainly appreciate the help in spreading our content to others. You can follow us on X at Irrespective77. Also at The Irrespective is the username for our account on TikTok. Last but not least, do not forget to donate. You can scan the QR code in the upper left-hand corner of the screen with your phone. Conversely, there is a link to PayPal's website, which we are using to process those donations, in the link that is available underneath the video player. For those of you that have been donating, we thank you for your patronage. And for those of you that will help us out economically, we thank you for your consideration. Well, that's all that time we have for this edition of the live stream. We thank you for watching. For Jesus, this has been Gio. Until the next occasion that we gather, may the Lord bless you.